You know, I find it incredible the way the character of Phoebe Halliwell dipped so drastically in the view of a majority of us that watched Charmed. Phoebe went from being the charming, fun loving, easygoing, adventurous, always up for a good time and willing to help save the innocent baby sister that a lot of us, myself inclusive, loved at the start of the show for, say, the first 2 to 3 seasons, and became this person that few of us recognized or even liked by the time we got to the latter seasons. And then when the show was wrapping up and the writers did some last minute bids to try and course correct her character again, a majority of us that had already been turned off by her character changes stayed turned off. And this is something I have been thinking about ever since I made my proof video 2 weeks ago. Why is Phoebe Halliwell so hated? After thinking about it, I drilled it down to four core reasons: her hypocrisy, her self centeredness, her lack of responsibility, and her sheer refusal to grow up. And we'll start with the biggest factor for me personally. Phoebe Halliwell is a hypocrite. Like, sure, all the Halliwell sisters to varying degrees have hypocritical tendencies, which I'd always found understandable because it seemed like a way to humanize their characters and keep them from diving completely into Mary Sue territory, which is fine by me. Sometimes you need a little spice, a little sprinkling of the girl the fuck to keep things interesting, if you know what I mean. So personally, I didn't mind it when it was done in moderation. But you see, the show made it a point to let us know that Phoebe Halliwell is winning the biggest hypocrite game, hands down. See, say what you will about her relationship with Cole, which I know a lot of you watching right now were dying and waiting for me to bring up, whether or not you liked Cole or not. But say what you will about her relationship with Cole and the mutual toxicity that was the defining part of said relationship. Phoebe's handling of the entire situation does show how big of a hypocrite she is. Now, the Charmed show makes it a point of call to have one or two or all three sisters turn evil every other episode. I personally think that they do so because when the Charmed girls are evil, they are incredibly hot. You can say this is because there's something wrong with my brain and whatever, but you cannot argue with me that Piper as a Fury was not hot as fuck. I mean, gods, there's something about a woman leaning into her rage that just gets me going, you know? Fury Piper is the girl of my dreams. And Prue, who is turned evil when she's tricked into marrying a warlock by the Dark Priestess Dantelian, was just. I personally think that that was the hottest Prue has looked on the show. That and when she had on the black leather outfit in the Hellfire episode, which was when we were first introduced to Bane. Like, I know he had to go to jail with him being a mob boss and crime lord and all, but hey, he and Prue together, when they did get together, hot. Very hot. I think it was our proximity to the bad side that is coloring my response, but you get the drift. And then there's Phoebe, who, even in the episodes where her sisters aren't turning evil, she turns evil or is possessed by something evil regardless. And I will still be the first one to admit that Alyssa Milano does evil Phoebe is irresistible very well. At least I, as an audience who is watching her, whether it's her smirking when she's possessed by the Woogie Man who lived in their basement back in season 1, or in the Pardon My Past episode where we see past Phoebe who is lured over to the dark side by incredibly hot warlock Anton, or fast forward to when she's possessed by the karma of Matahari. Evil Phoebe is hot, there's no disputing it. And because the show knows how hot Alyssa Milano is, they try to show us evil Phoebe as many times as we can get, which once again, I personally have no complaints about. What I do have complaints about is the fact that the show establishes that even good people can be tempted by evil. The charmed ones are aware that circumstances beyond their control and sometimes even moments of carelessness can result in them being possessed or pulled into the sphere of evil. And this is especially true for Phoebe, who, in their many many lifetimes, and there have been a lot, we see that of the sisters, she's the one who is almost always particularly drawn to evil and vice versa. It is, of course, why when Cole shows up to assassinate the Charmed Ones, as is the duty and job he's given, he targets Phoebe as the way in. But then emotions get in the way and he eventually finds himself falling for Phoebe and vice versa. Until Phoebe finds out the truth of his heritage and proceeds to hide it from her sisters and not really fully, completely vanquish him. Like, girl, what? Now, I'm not disputing the fact that Cole and Phoebe have the most toxic and unhealthy relationship in the show. Charmed doesn't attempt to hide it, and no matter how attractive anyone might have found Cole, we all know and can agree that he is bad news. That isn't the point. The problem with Phoebe's hypocrisy stems from when Cole becomes the source of all evil. Now, a lot of times when the fandom talks about Cole's turn into the source and his demand to pull Phoebe in as his queen, I've always found that a lot of those conversations often strip Phoebe of her agency in the events as they go down. Because to acknowledge the role that Phoebe plays and what she actively chooses would show her for the hypocrite she is in the situation. Firstly, Cole becoming the source was because he came to the aid of the Charmed Ones and tried protecting Phoebe as he's wont to do. Because he loves her, as messy and toxic as that is. And the sisters at this point have no power because the source, terrified of the prophecy that the Charmed Ones would be the ones to destroy him, goes to acquire the hollow in order to have the power to take them on. It strips the sisters of their powers and poisons Leo via a dark lighter, and with that, the stage is set for him to take out the Charmed Ones once and for all. He attacks Phoebe. Cole intercepts it, thus absorbing the source's powers. The sisters then vanquish him, and as far as they are concerned, the source is done with. Unaware that Cole's sacrifice meant that since Balthazar, his demon half, had already been destroyed, there was a void inside of him that was now conveniently filled by the hollow. I am stressing this sequence of events to explain that if Cole was not in love with Phoebe and always rushing in to help her and her sisters whenever they as much as whisper his name, that situation as it was would not have occurred. Cole becoming the source of all evil is partly because of the situation where he was helping the Charmed Ones. And the reason why a lot of us as viewers found Phoebe's entire spiel when Cole turns full on evil and is the source is because we remember the why and how Cole arrived in that situation. Like, I get it. Charmed is about the girls. They are our main characters and the focus of the show. But the thing about main characters is that other characters exist to prop them up, and when they've served their purpose, they are disposed of. Cole served his role in protecting the girls, and when the reveal is made that he was the source of all evil, he wasn't extended any of that grace or understanding that they gave each other, which I personally read as hypocritical, particularly on the part of Phoebe. Because the show has been nothing if not consistent in showing that, one, Phoebe is also someone that almost constantly flirts with being evil, and two, yet her sisters always pull through for her in order to save her. And yet, when the time comes for her to extend that same courtesy to the man who has become who he is at the moment, partly because of him coming through to help save her and her sisters, all that is out of the window. Now, I know some of you might say that, but no, Ria, he turned Phoebe evil. It's his fault that Phoebe turned against her sisters. And yes, it does play some role in that. I am not going to deny it. But know who else bore some responsibility in the whole shit? Phoebe fucking Halliwell. Because I am tired. I am sick and tired of every damn time when we try and talk about this, someone brings up that damn demon baby. Phoebe was not pregnant when her ass married the source. She was very much aware when she chose Cole in that instance. Like, sure, she did that because she wanted to stand with her man. And I agree, he had and was emotionally cajoling her and manipulating her to that point. But She was still the one who made that choice. She was the one, no evil influence whatsoever, who decided to participate in a fucking dark wedding. I remember watching that scene and yelling, "Girl, didn't Prue go through this? Wasn't your ass alive and well when Prue turned evil because she was married to some dark warlock a couple of seasons ago? And even then, wasn't Prue's ass in some spell induced sleep when she had no idea what was being done to her? So please, goddess, tell me, why the fuck are you awake and functional and walking your ass down that damn aisle? Phoebe Halliwell. It made no sense. Which is why I found myself hissing and rolling my eyes. And I'm sure a lot of people who were watching did the same when, after everything goes ballistic DEFCON 1, Phoebe directly shifts the entirety of the blame on Cole, trying to imply that everything that happened was forced on her. Like, sure, she didn't ask for the demon baby. That was the Oracle and Cole's doing. But everything that came before that, she chose that. I am not saying Cole isn't a manipulative shithead. My point is that Phoebe also played a role in how things turned out. And her refusal to acknowledge that, to take ownership, to extend even a smidgen of grace to a man she had claimed to love, is why a lot of us consider her the biggest hypocrite of the show. She's someone who is selective about what she remembers and how she shows up to help. And it not only has her be a hypocrite, but also makes her the most selfish and self-centered of her sisters. Because I don't know about you, but refusing to help people who are on the verge of being unjustly evicted from their homes by their slumlord landlord because your ex asked you for help does a selfish person make. That scene speaks directly to how Phoebe as a character, unfortunately, cannot look beyond herself and always finds a way to center our own needs within the story. Like, I get it. At this point, Cole is the ex who just wouldn't leave her alone and seems to desperately want her back. And she's frustrated that she cannot shake him off. But as a charmed one, she does have a responsibility to save and help the innocent in whatever way she can. And I found it very frustrating that for Phoebe, her ass didn't consider it pressing or true or important enough until she got write-ins from readers of her column, which is when she realizes that, oh shit, this might be bigger than I'd initially thought. Let me go check it out. And of course, when it turns out that the scumbag landlord recognized her and had plans to expose her, which in turn led Cole to killing him in order to keep her identity a secret, Phoebe reacts in yet another predictable way. She counts that as Cole being evil and demands he stay away from her. Now, I'm over here watching the show and also shouting that Cole should stay away from Phoebe, not because of anything Phoebe is saying, mind you, because at this point, I was just tired. It was clear that the show had written her to have a very black and white view of things, which meant she would always try to circumnavigate the situation to make sure that any act of blackening on her part must be turned to white, must be whitewashed, as that's the only way she gets to live with herself. But for anyone who lives on the gray side of things, her instinctual reaction is to write them off. Which is ironic and hypocritical because the charmed ones make some great choices a lot of damn time. For example, the many instances where they use their magic for personal gain and it comes back to bite them in the ass. Although now that I think about it, the show seemed to forget that in the later seasons, and they did allow Phoebe to break that particular rule time and again with little to no consequences. And to be fair to her, her sisters are also guilty of this. The only thing is that Phoebe does this more. And we're able to forgive her in the earlier seasons and to let it go because ultimately she was the youngest charm sister. And our hope and expectation is that she would grow out of it in the latter seasons. Because that's what characters are meant to do. Evolve and grow. At least with the way in which Charmed was told. It has a case and lesson of the week for the sisters to help out an innocent, but they often end the episode having learned something. And I guess a lot of us assumed that that was going to be Phoebe's journey in the show as well. She's going to learn to be less self-absorbed, going to learn to be less of a hypocrite, going to learn to take on more responsibility, that she's going to eventually grow up. But she doesn't, really. The introduction of her Ask Phoebe column brings all of this into stark relief. Phoebe becomes all about her column, constantly ignoring their work as witches in order to dish out advice to her readers. Her duty as a charmed one, which had been established since the first season as one that was very much a responsibility, is something that she drops to the wayside because saving the innocent is way harder than giving out advice to her millions of adoring fans. And I don't know about you, but I really, really hated Ask Phoebe. I personally didn't think it served the plot, and I thought it brought out a lot of Phoebe's worst traits. Because, yes, I totally understand why she would pass on saving an innocent to answer the question she was asked for her newest column. The latter is clearly more fun for her. But it doesn't serve the Phoebe that we met in the first season. The Phoebe who ideally should have grown out of those inclinations by the time we got to season 6. But we don't get that Phoebe. Plus, the show having her gain empath abilities, which in turn was used for her work in her columns, is yet another way in which the don't use your powers for personal gain rule was thrown out of the window by Phoebe. Because I don't know about you, but that is a clear case of personal gain, and Phoebe leans into that. Plus, I still remember when our column was said to be non-judgmental, and I found myself cackling because this is the same woman who used her article to give commentary and pass judgment on her sister's relationship with Richard. Like, sure, Richard Montana was not the best boyfriend for Paige, but Phoebe, using her column to basically call him a relapsing alcoholic, asking Paige to do away with him, and then being surprised that Paige was pissed, was me just laughing all over again. Because talk about hypocritical. Phoebe, you dated a demon. You married the source of all evil. Even when that same sister was warning you, your ass has absolutely no fucking room to talk. Leave that to Piper, who's made much better dating and marrying decisions and choices. Thank you very much. Like what? See, if you're a fan of Phoebe Halliwell and still are after all 8 seasons, good for you. I am happy and delighted for you that you got to keep your interest in the character going for so long. I personally, however, got so tired, and I consider it a shame, really, because she might not have been my favorite sister in seasons 1 through 3. That was Prue. But she tied closely with Piper in those seasons because I love them both practically equally. Season 4, however, started the shift, and I realized that the writers had no interest in helping her character grow or mature. It felt like such a disservice to her because Phoebe, out of all of the charmed ones, was the one that had the most to prove. And if only the showrunners and writers had taken those kernels, those traits of hers, and developed it, help us see her as this dynamic woman that she is, who is actively growing and becoming a better person as the seasons unfolded, she might have risen up to be my absolute favorite charmed sister. But alas, we didn't get that. And now that I think about it, maybe that's the reason why Prue's my favorite. Because we only had her for 3 seasons, and the show didn't have the time to massacre her like they did Phoebe, butcher her like they did Piper, and ignore her like they did Paige. But hey, those are just my thoughts, scattered and all over the place as they are. For which I'm sorry, by the way. But I am curious to hear what are yours. Let me know in the comments. Hit the like button if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share this video if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love? Perfectly valid coping mechanism.